So let's take a look at how building up a problems measure works for a particular client in this simulated real example. So let's imagine I had a client came to see me yesterday, the 24th of March. Today's the 25th of March. It was late on in the day. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I just didn't get around to completing my notes for the client. And I'm going back in to do that today on the 25th of March. So let's clarify the steps first of all. Well, when I first set up this client in the profile section, I will have chosen to tick problems and goals because I don't know whether I may want to use one or other of these with this particular client. Now, the client came to see me yesterday, and I'm going in today to write up the notes for that client. So as I go in, I can see that at the moment I've got nothing showing about problems here at all. Well, I'm going to have to first of all make sure that problems was indeed selected for this particular session, which it is. So that's fine. So now I go to the Problems tab and I start adding my problems, or my client's problems. So poor sleep, waking in middle of night. Now here's the critical thing, the date raised. As you can see, this defaults to today's date, the 25th of March, but my session with the client was yesterday. So I need to make sure that this is dated yesterday's date. So it is in parallel with the actual session that actually happened. How long did the client report they're having trouble with the sleep for? Let's say 3 months to a year. Create. And let's add one more problem. Angry outbursts. Hard to control my temper. So the language is in the language of the client in the first person. Again, the date must be the date of the actual treatment session they had with me yesterday. And for how long? Let's say 1 to 5 years. Create. Now, there are 2 items, and in my conversation with my client yesterday, I said, you know, if you were to score this poor sleep problem, 10 being the worst it could possibly be, 0 being the best it could be, what is it now? And my client said, oh, it's an 8. And on the angry outbursts, what score would you give that? A 7. Now, how am I, as the therapist, going to get those scores in there? Well, let's take a look. Because I made sure that the dates that I entered were the same dates as the actual session that took place yesterday, when I now return to my session record, I will see that I have this problems measure in here now. I open the drop down and I can score. Now our client said it was 8 for poor sleep and it was 7 for angry outbursts. Now the scoring is done and the measure is there and built. When I'm adding a next appointment for the client to come next week, on, for example, the 31st of March at 1600 again, when I scroll down, if I want to score problems again at that session, I can make sure it's ticked here. If I didn't want to score them every week, I can untick here. In this case, I'm using problems. Let's say I'm deciding not to use goals because I didn't record it in the language of goals. Then I'm going to choose problems, and then my client will be able to score those problems, those items that we've already identified at that first session. And you can see that these are waiting to be filled in, sending out my link to the client the day before the appointment, or if I'm using the automated system, it will automatically go out to them. So in effect, there is now a problems measure built for the client. But the critical thing is that this will not appear unless the dates that the problems are entered is exactly the same date as the session that it took place on.